This move immediately stakes a claim in the center, opening lines for the queen and king's bishop, and is the most popular first move, leading to a vast array of established opening systems. This move, 1. c5, initiates the Sicilian defense, a highly complex and popular response to 1. e4, immediately creating an asymmetrical pawn structure and fighting for central control by challenging White's d4 push. This move initiates the Sicilian defense, aiming to control the d4 square and prepare for central pawn breaks, while developing a piece actively. This move, d6, is the most common and theoretically sound response to 1. e4 c5-2, nf3, establishing the Sicilian defense and preparing to challenge White's central pawn. This move initiates a central pawn break, opening the position and aiming to gain space and initiative against Black's Sicilian defense. This capture is the standard response in the open Sicilian, immediately challenging White's central pawn majority and opening the c-file for Black's rook, which is a key strategic objective in this variation. This move leads into the main lines of the open Sicilian, specifically the Alapin variation after nf3, d4, cx-d4, nx-d4, where White aims for rapid development and central control by recapturing the pawn. This move, nf6, is a classical response in the open Sicilian, developing a piece and attacking White's central pawn, forcing White to defend it or advance it, thereby defining the pawn structure early. This move maintains pressure on the center and develops a piece towards the king's wing, a standard continuation in many variations of the Sicilian defense. This move prepares to control the b5 square, preventing White's knight from developing there and potentially supporting Black's queenside pawn. Expansion or maneuvering. This move prepares to fianchetto the king's bishop, aiming for control of the long diagonal and a solid defensive setup, common in many variations of the Sicilian defense. This move decisively challenges White's central knight and aims to establish a firmer pawn presence in the center, typical of the Scheveningen variation of the Sicilian defense. This move develops the knight to a less common square, preparing to support the pawn on e5 and potentially reroute the knight to g3 or f4 to support a kingside attack while avoiding the immediate central pawn confrontation. This move develops the bishop to a natural square, preparing for kingside castling while reinforcing the central pawn structure. This move develops the bishop to a strong diagonal, supporting the central pawn push and preparing for castling, typical in the Sicilian Najdorf variation. Castling kingside completes the development of the king's flank and connects the rooks, a crucial step in securing the king and preparing for active piece play in this variation of the Sicilian defense. White castles kingside to safeguard the king and connect the rooks, preparing for central pawn breaks and piece activity. This move prepares to reinforce the central pawn tension and develop the queenside knight, aiming to control key squares and potentially launch a queenside expansion. This move aims to prevent the pawn on g6 from advancing to g5, which could harass White's kingside. Black expands on the queenside, aiming to challenge White's central control and open lines for counterplay. This move develops the bishop to an active square on the long diagonal, preparing to support the advance of the d-pawn and potentially pressure Black's queenside. This move develops the bishop to a strong diagonal, aiming to control the center and potentially support a future queenside expansion, while also preparing to castle kingside. This aggressive pawn thrust on f4 aims to disrupt Black's pawn center and open lines for White's pieces, initiating a thematic struggle often seen in variations of the Sicilian defense where White seeks Active play in the center. This move aggressively advances the kingside pawn to challenge black's central control and prepare for a direct kingside attack, aiming to open lines for white's pieces. This move challenges white's knight and aims to disrupt white's kingside pawn advance by creating play on the queenside. This move aggressively challenges black's knight and aims to exploit the pawn structure created by black's previous moves. This exchange opens the e-file, creating dynamic pawn tension and offering white a central pawn majority, which should be a long-term strategic advantage. This pawn capture is a critical decision, immediately opening the e-file for white's rook and potentially creating weaknesses in black's pawn structure while offering an immediate tactical opportunity. This move opens the f-file for the rook, creating immediate attacking pressure on black's kingside and potentially preparing for a central pawn push or tactical skirmishes. This move challenges white's powerful bishop on g2 and opens up the g-file for potential counterplay. This exchange resolves white's central pawn tension and opens the e-file, but weakens black's kingside pawn structure and allows white to activate their rook on the now open file. Returning the rook to the first rank allows white to regroup and contest the d-file, while preparing to support the d5 pawn and potentially launch a kingside attack. This recapture on e8 opens the e-file for black's remaining rook, preparing to contest this vital central file and potentially increase pressure on white's position. This move activates the queen, preparing to contest the central open files and support a potential pawn push on the kingside or queenside. This move initiates a dangerous check on the white king, forcing a response and potentially disrupting white's coordinated pieces. Kh1 provides an essential escape square for the king on g1, safeguarding against potential discovered attacks or checks along the h-file that could arise from black's active pieces. This move queen to f2 is a tactical blunder, allowing the rook on e8 to recapture on d5 with a fork on the king and the queen.